Welcome to Reddit Aliens. What do you think is the most creepy or most unsettling unsolved mystery ever? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy. The Cleveland torso murderer. When my grandparents were my age, there was a serial killer who chopped off the heads and appendages of 12 to 20 people and left their torsos for people to find. The famous Detective Elliot Ness was on the case, and the killer taunted him by leaving 2 torsos within full view of his office. The killer was never identified, nor were the majority of the victims. The Axeman of New Orleans. Guy was murdering people but wrote a letter that he wouldn't kill anyone who played jazz in their home. Never caught. Honestly, the Cape intruder isn't disturbing, just weird as hell. During the night in Cape, Maine in like 2005, people kept their doors unlocked, would wake up to find a man staring at them, and he would quickly flee. No people were ever injured and nothing was ever stolen. They just watched people sleep, apparently. I can't remember his name, but there was a case of a college-age young man, Brian I think is his first name, who was reported missing after a night out. There's security camera footage of him entering a bar, but absolutely no footage of him leaving. Like, he went into the bar and just flat out dropped off the face of the earth. The last I knew, he's never been found, and nobody knows what happened to him. ETA, since it keeps coming up, the bar was on a 2nd floor at the time with only one public entrance or exit. The police extensively reviewed all the footage. Everyone, except for Brian, who was at the bar that night, was seen leaving on the cameras. The Hinterkaifeck murder always freaked me out. I've read quite a bit about it, and it sounds like it's probably a neighbor, but the creepy part is that the killer was probably living or hiding out in the attic for multiple days beforehand. I read about this for the first time when I went on a multi-night hiking trip. I stayed in cabins. The first night, there was a loft above where we were sleeping. I stared at it all night. Technically not unsolved, since everyone can guess what happened to her, but it's one of the creepiest in my opinion. Alyssa Turney was a teenager who disappeared in 2001. Her stepfather, Michael Turney, was obsessed with her. He stalked her at work, put cameras in the vents to spy on her, and made her sign contracts to say he never molested her. Michael picked her up from school early on May 17, 2001, and she's never been seen since. Her half-sister, Sarah Turney, has an amazing podcast called Voices for Justice, which explains the case in detail, and because of her, Michael was arrested in August 2020. What happened to Pedro Lopez? He is one of the most prolific serial killers in history and claims to have murdered over 350 women and girls. Since his release in 1998, his whereabouts are currently unknown. The Las Vegas mass shooting is the worst such event in our nation's history, and law enforcement basically told us nothing. Does anyone else ever wonder why this particular shooting was kind of scrubbed from coverage after a while? I mean, it was the biggest. I don't know. The death of Rebecca Zahau has stuck with me. Zahau's nude body was found hanging from a balcony with her wrists and ankles bound and hands behind her back. Her death was ruled as suicide. As if that wasn't strange enough, 2 days prior to her death, the 6-year-old son of her boyfriend fell down a staircase and died. His death was ruled an accident. There's a lot to read about this case, and I highly recommend it if you're into true crime. I remember watching the Unsolved Mysteries episode about a person in 1977 who would send creepy anonymous letters to random folks in a small town, actually threatening ones too. The sender started by mailing up a woman and telling her, if I remember right, that they knew she was cheating on her husband with a superintendent something. She vehemently denied. Then they threatened her husband by saying he'd be in danger if he did not stop the affair. The couple decided to take it among themselves to hunt the sender down. That ended with the husband dead in his crashed pickup truck. The sender kicked the wife while she was down by leaving threatening sing-alongs her bus route, at least one of which had an actual booby trap on it. They found and arrested a suspect, but it's still unknown today if he's the actual sender. He denies it. The idea that somebody has been quietly studying your life just so they could begin to anonymously blackmail you or make up a rumor to blackmail you with is pretty damn scary. Addendum. In 2021, A forensics professional claimed that the police were right all along, and the suspect, who was released by then, was the sender. But the massive hole in her claim is how he was still able to write letters during his time in prison. In the early 80s, all within 18 months of each other, 3 paper boys in the Des Moines, Iowa area all went missing during their morning route. The cases have never been solved. There are theories ranging from a pedophilia ring, an ex-employee who was a creeper kidnapping them, and even a lone wolf type situation. It's a bizarre case that has baffled Iowa for years. What happened to the Eilean Moor lighthouse keepers? Most likely they were swept out to sea by violent waves, but no storms were reported on the dates they went missing. And if they were there, why would they leave the safety of their lighthouse? The Black Dahlia case. How can someone randomly disappear and be found chopped in half by a surgeon who was never found? What? Doesn't add up to me. The Setagaya family murder. Late on the night of December 30th, 2000, in Setagaya, Tokyo, a man broke into the house of a family of 4, strangled the son in his bed, stabbed the father, and brutally killed the mother and daughter. The killer then spent hours in the house eating their food, using their toilet, and going through their paperwork like he owned the place, and eventually left, never to be found since. Boy in the Box, 1957, Philadelphia. Warning, graphic details. This story just makes me so sad and sticks out to me as a true crime junkie, especially with the recent case of a child being found in a Las Vegas suitcase that is still under investigation. Basically, a young boy whose age was estimated to be 3 to 7 years old was found in a box, naked and mutilated on the side of a road in Philadelphia. It was strange because the boy appeared to have been very malnourished, but was recently groomed, haircut, fingernails all trimmed. He was covered in scars, some surgical, and many bruises. His bones were broken to fit into the box. Cause of death determined to be blunt force trauma. How anyone could do something like this is just foul and disturbing to say the very least. The worst part is, it's just a big mystery. Almost nothing to go off of. There wasn't anyone matching his description reported missing. There wasn't any record of this kid. His pure existence was a mystery. Nothing came of the case, even all these years later. There were some leads, but they didn't result to much, despite heavy media coverage and a search to find who this boy was. What happened to him, and who did this? What were the surgical scars for? Why the box? Why was he kept malnourished but well-groomed? Kyron Horman. I feel like somebody knows something that will blow the case wide open, but to this day, nobody knows where he went or what happened to him. There are some solid theories out there, but it'll always be a mystery until we get an official answer. I know it's basic, but Black Dahlia is that one case that gives me the creeps. For everyone who doesn't know, which I think the majority know of this case, Elizabeth Short, aka the Black Dahlia, was found cut in half in Los Angeles, California in 1947. Most of her blood was drained out of her body. The woman who found her body thought she was a mannequin. That's how pale she was. She was cut with surgical precision, no organs harmed. Her face was also cut from mouth to ears, making a permanent creepy smile on her face. No blood on the ground, so the body was definitely moved to the place it was found at. After she was found, I think 9 to 10 days after, an envelope was sent to the examiner with cut and pasted letters, saying something in the lines of, "Here is Dahlia's belongings." The envelope contained Elizabeth's security card, birth certificate, photographs, etc., all cleaned with gasoline to remove fingerprints. I think in March of the same year, the murderer committed suicide, leaving a note confessing to the murder and saying stuff like, "I've waited for the police to come find me. I'm too much of a coward to come turn myself in. This is the best way out for me." His clothes were found, and this note probably had fingerprints on it, yet no one could identify the killer, and the killer is still unidentified to this day. This case always brings me the chills because he has to be a trained professional to make those cuts, and he has to be so sick to even think about doing that. He said he killed himself, but can we even be sure? Nobody was found. It's sad to think that cases like the Black Dahlia or Jack the Ripper, these will probably never be solved, lost to history and technology. So, I don't know. What do you guys think? The disappearance of the Beaumont children. The Beaumont children are siblings who disappeared in 1966. There are still to this day investigations ongoing to try and find the remains of these children. There have been foundations of sheds and houses dug up. The children have never been found, and the suspects have never been identified. Alicia Navarro. She went missing, presumably after sneaking out to meet with a man she was talking to on Discord. It's creepy because of how real it is. As a naive girl who met up with guys I befriended online as a teenager, I just cannot stop thinking about how goddamn lucky I was. I've watched, listened, read a lot of true crime over the years, and one that stands out to me is from the reboot of Unsolved Mysteries with the man who fell through the roof of the hotel, or was thrown rather. I remember there was no specific explanation for how he went through like that. The suicide theory was even debunked. Most creepy cases have some logic somewhere in them, but this is one just didn't add up, I've heard so far. I don't think there's any new developments, but anyone who's familiar, what do you think happened? Not necessarily the most creepy or disturbing thing I know of, but it was close to me. A friend I went to school with from 6th to 12th grade was driving home when a car pulled up next to his and the driver shot him in the head, killed him instantly. This was about 7 years ago. No one has any idea why or who the shooter was. No one has ever said anything. He had no enemies, was universally liked, never hurt anyone. He was 20. Our community is not large. Someone knows something, but has never come forward. Real shame. Had a bright future. In 1969, a student was killed in the stacks of the library at my old college, Penn State, and was found with a singular stab wound on her chest. It wasn't even late or anything, and while there were many suspects, no one was ever arrested for it. It's insane how someone could kill a person in broad daylight at a major university and get away with it. It's not really anything super crazy in comparison to other stories here. It's just weird to me personally because I would always study there, and I didn't find out about it until after I graduated. The case of Adam immediately came to mind. Unidentified male child whose torso was discovered in the River Thames in London, United Kingdom on 21 September 2001. Dubbed Adam by police officers, the unidentified remains belonged to a black male, around 4 to 8 years old, who had been wearing orange girls' shorts. The post-mortem showed that Adam had been poisoned, his throat had been slit to drain the blood from his body, and his head and limbs had been expertly removed. Investigators believe the child was likely from southwestern Nigeria, and that several days before his murder, he was trafficked to the United Kingdom for a multi-ritual sacrifice. To date, nobody has been charged with Adam's murder, and his true identity remains unknown. Wikipedia/Adam murder victim. Rest in peace, little dude. In my opinion, it's the city of San Francisco train derailment that occurred in Hardin, Nevada on 8/12/1939. The train, run by the Southern Pacific Railroad at the time, derailed at a bridge over the Humboldt River at a speed range of 60 to 90 miles per hour. The accident resulted in 24 fatalities and multiple injuries. Days later, investigators discovered tools at the bottom of the Humboldt River, determining that the wreck was caused by sabotage of the rails. The Who Put Bella in the Wych Elm case. During or around World War II, a woman somehow ends up in a wych elm. She is then found years later by some kids playing in the woods after the tree had grown around her corpse. No one knows who she was or why she was in the tree, if she was from a nearby town or if she was a spy, as her death was probably in World War II. Yet again, sometime later, strange graffiti messages started showing up asking the question, who put Bella in the wych elm, hence the case's name, although the victim's name is probably not Bella. Jack the Ripper. There's a few victims compared to other cases. However, the way it was done is horrible. It's a mystery unsolved since 1888, and that will never be. When you know that during that times London smelled, was hidden by a thick fog, everything was dirty, and the people all struggled despite the industrial boom. Imagine when you are from a lower class ever knowing a serial killer is outside and you literally have nothing to protect you. The policemen were useless. It happened quick and the killer disappeared. It put London in terror. Alright, so feel free down in the comments if we didn't get any on this coverage today, and let us know some of your favorite. I like the Long Island serial killer. How about you guys? I don't know about creepy, but disturbing? Yeah. The Delphi murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty Herman. The two teenage girls were hiking on a trail in Delphi, Indiana, walking across a bridge. One of them spots a creepy guy following them on the bridge and even films it. There's audio recording of suspected bridge guy ordering them to go down the hill. They were murdered and found not far from the bridge they were on. That was years ago, and the murder is nowhere closer to being solved, even with video of the suspect, the bridge guy. There's been new developments in the last year or two where people thought it might be some guy, but he got ruled out. Now it's a father-son suspect situation right now, and people seem to be holding out hope it's them. I personally don't think it is, but in any case, it's been years now. Doesn't look to be solved anytime soon. Very sad situation. What happened to the 3 prisoners that escaped from Alcatraz? Supposedly a letter was provided 30 years or so after to the FBI, yet they vanished without a trace, and the only thing left were the items they escaped with that washed up. If they were washed out to sea, the items wouldn't have been on a beach, yet no trace of them. The ghost ship of the Mary Celeste. It was an American merchant brigantine discovered adrift and deserted in the Atlantic Ocean on December 4, 1872. Ship's cargo was intact, and captain's and crew's personal belongings were undisturbed. None of the 10 people who had been on board, including Captain Briggs, his wife, and their 2-year-old daughter, were ever seen or heard from again. Mine, but it will not resonate to anyone else because it is very pertinent to my own life. For 36 years, I've been wondering exactly how my dad died in the car crash. Did he die on impact? What really happened to the nurse who drove her van into him as he sat seat-buckled in the passenger seat? I never saw him after, so was he cremated due to extensive physical damage? Did he ever even have an obituary? Where was he and his friends, young too at that time? The questions have been on my mind since age 5. I still have dreams where I see my daddy and try to tell him not to go out tonight. He would be in an accident, but in these dreams I can never reach him, and he never turns around to face me. The Hinterkaifeck murders in Germany. Someone murdered a family of 6, one by one in their barn and home, and then lived with the corpses for 3 days. Prior to the murders, the family's maid had quit because she heard footsteps in the attic and thought the house was haunted. The father told his neighbors he found footprints in the snow leading from the woods to a broken door in the barn and a strange newspaper on their property that no one in the area subscribed to. Look it up on Wiki. It's some real creepy shit.